All right, so this morning I was going through the comments and I saw something from Inu Blue, which thank you so much for all of your kind donations, but the comment really caught my attention. Notice when paid suddenly it's work, house cleaning, daycare, caregiving, when it's no longer a labor of love, they charge very handsome fees for it. And that's true. Almost everything that we do as poor people is our own labor to get things done. From having to train ourselves in the gym to painting your own toenails to sometimes even cutting your own hair. And it goes even further than that. We have to wash our own cars, build our own furniture, clean our houses, and somehow find time to relax. But the reality is that our lives are very hard. Like, I've spent all day working on videos. I built that shelf thing that took me a couple of hours. Once I figured out where all the little pieces went, I was pretty good. But until I got my bearings with it, I would have much rather have paid someone to do that rather than sit there with the frustration of it. Just like when I was building my couch, it was just annoying. But it's what we have to do, whether you like it or not. Rich people have the option to let someone else raise their children and send them off to boarding school. And then when they come back from boarding school, they send them off to college in another state. And hopefully they stay gone. But if they don't, well, they'll find other ways of getting rid of them because they don't like doing the things that eat up their time and it's not fun. Even running their own businesses is left to people in management. The CEO usually isn't the owner, but everything about our lives involves work that isn't paid, that isn't paid well. Like when you think about what a maid cost, right? Like before I left my last apartment, I wanted to get it cleaned so I could get my security deposit back. Well, the person they sent over charged me $250 for, I believe, an hour and a half of cleaning. The person that I was going to hire to help me move my furniture, which is just my bed, my bed frame, and my shelves, was going to charge me $150 an hour or just $150 just to move my bed. And I was like, this is ridiculous. And they'd even ask you right there, are you going to help them? Like, if I'm going to pay someone to move my bed and then they're going to have the audacity to ask me if I'm going to help, oh my gosh. The ridiculous nature of work in today's society just it boggles the mind. And with that said, let's get into our opening monologue. You ever notice how the second you ask to get paid, the favor suddenly becomes a business transaction? Like when I like when I'm scrubbing your floors or babysitting your kids for free, it's love. But if I send an invoice, now I'm the bad guy. Funny how quickly people forget that labor is labor, whether you're crying about it or cutting a check. In all honesty, if you can't afford to pay for the help you demand, you can't afford the help. This to me is it hits really deeply because as a person who's been in technology since I was a kid, more often than not, once people find out what you do, they're going to ask you to come over. Hey, by the way, can you come over? I need this installed or I need this replaced. And sure, I don't mind helping people. It's what I've been doing my whole life, especially when I know people are broke. If I look at your clothes and I look at the expression on your face and I see that you don't have any money, I have lots and lots of computer parts that have been left over from building computers and taking computers apart and throwing away computers. So I can usually fix just about anything for free. But the second you stick your hand out, you're seen as ungrateful for the dinner they made you, the cookies they're offering you. Once you stick your hand out and you ask for a little dough, suddenly you are always the criminal who's asking too much. And I don't know why it's this profession, but I imagine that all trades have some sort of person who will imagine that because you're friends and even work friends, that you will come over and you will do whatever they ask for free. And I think that's cruel because now it makes you seem like you misled them, right? Because they were under the understanding that you were coming over and they were going to make you a sandwich and that was going to be enough for whatever amount, how many hours you spent fixing their stuff or upgrading it or getting them something new. Because nobody ever wants to pay. But when it comes to a service, if you have to call someone, right? If you have to call, like, I don't know, the Geek Squad or Fire Dogs, whatever company you have to call to come over to your house and fix your wireless network, they're going to charge you an arm and a leg. But if you're just that guy that you know that works in technology, then you don't have that option. It's the same thing with asking a perfect stranger to come over and watch your kids because you don't want to watch them. And they're like, "Oh yeah, we're friends. Can you come over and watch my kids while I go, I don't know, bang Susie Rotten Crotch behind the Taco Bell?" Yeah, it doesn't really hit the same way. It's like I remember my parents when I was little that would always ask the grandparents to watch kids like Friday nights or take them for a weekend. And then when they would ask for something and be like, "Why? Did you only help me to get something back?" We live in the day and age where some people don't understand that it's always ass cash or what's the other one? Oh my gosh. Or gas, right? Ass, gas, or cash. No one rides for free. And unfortunately, there are people that take offense when people say things like that, especially girls. When girls go out to drink to bars, right, and they get some simp to buy them drinks. At the end of the night, he's hoping to get a little reward for all of his money, and his reward is going home to shake hands with the governor because she didn't understand the deal. Everything in life is about a deal. Whether or not it's implied, it's up to you to interpret that. But don't get butthurt when someone does you a favor and then they ask you to pay them because, hey, it's a transaction. All right, with that said, let's get into our first talking point. From housework to caregiving, society runs because people, mostly women, give their time for free. But funny how no one claps for you until you charge $30 an hour and print an invoice. This is always how the deal ended. I remember a very specific time where I went over to a professor's house to swap out a hard drive in his laptop that had died. Like I said, I have a lot of computer parts. Over half my life, I've been collecting computer parts. And so if you need something and I have it used, I'll offer to sell it to you, right? At a much more reduced price, right? I remember this was back in, oh God, it must have been like 2012, right? When we still had big hard drives with spinning disks. And it obviously the hard drive in this one was a what was it, a 2.5 inch, not the big 3.5. But I offered to replace it with a used hard drive, and then he looked at me like I was the biggest criminal in the world because I charged him labor and then I charged him for the parts. And he just looked at me like, "Hey, what's this?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm also going to need a ride back," because at that time I didn't have a car and taking the bus from his house would have taken me hours to get back. And again, you run into that, "Hey, well, I didn't know I was getting myself into all of this. If I'd known it was going to cost this much, I would have called a professional." And I'm like, "Oh my God, you're going to do that to me where, oh, I didn't know you were a professional." If you're going to do any job, it's professional. Very rarely do we have time to do things for other people for free. If I'm going to give you money, there better be something in exchange. And I don't think it's wrong to point out the fact that, hey, you asked to borrow money. Well, I'm going to ask to borrow a little, you know what? Because that's the way the world works. And some people look at that and like, "Oh my gosh, why would you ever do that? Why would you ever ask?" If you're not interested in a transaction, don't ask someone to help you for free because most of us would rather be working and making money rather than spending our free time doing things for free. Talking point number two, The whole your family and you're such a good person guilt trip is just a trick to get your labor without paying you. If you really loved and respected you, if they really loved and respected you, they'd want you paid and thriving, not tired and broke. This is the perfect way that Evil Corp sees all of its workers. Show up to work today, work like the owner. But when it comes to paying you, they're going to check the time clock for every second that you weren't working. Every minute that you try to stay overtime, they'll ask you, well, why can't you get your work done during the regular 40-hour work week? It always comes down to pointing the finger at you whenever you want real money. When you go to a job interview and it pays $15 an hour, and you look at the person interviewing you and you say to them, I can't live off this much money. And you know what they'll say to you? Oh, that's you being bad with money, or you're being difficult, or you're entitled. You think that you're entitled to more money. And you're like, I don't want more money. I just want to be able to afford to buy both food and pay rent in the same month. But most corporations and even small businesses will look at you like, well, I'm trying to become $1 million business on the back of the minimum wage. And then when you don't work as hard, when you don't show up with that motivation like they have every morning to get up and go make real money, because they exploit you. All of America's jobs at the bottom are just one giant plantation. The slaves show up in the morning, they toil all day, they go home with nothing in their pockets. It's not real money when you're spending 90+% of your monthly income just on survival. There's no leisure, there's no savings, there's no dating, there's no nothing other than work. And that starts to get pretty boring when every weekend you have to spend time figuring out how you're going to make extra money so that you can afford to pay your bills on time. Rent's due next Thursday. There's no negotiating with the landlord. Like, I've had people tell me, it's like, well, why don't you just talk to your landlord and do chores so that you can get a cut in the rent? Really? Is that what I'm going to ask my boss? It's like, well, since my 40 hours a week isn't cutting it, do I need to do chores on the side for Evil Corp in order to be able to get a living wage? And they'll just tell you that you not making enough money is your own personal problem. This is the hourly pay at McDonald's. If you can't live off $14.75 an hour, you're going to have to find something else. And the great thing about that is they don't even acknowledge that it's a problem. It's you, it's your problem. When corporations want to pay wages so low, offer so little to the employee that they can't survive working there, and then wonder the big question, why does no one want to work anymore? And then you kind of look at them and it's like, why does no one want to earn nothing anymore? Why would someone who needs money badly come and work for a business that treats them poorly and tries to guilt trip you into believing that you're part of something bigger? Because no corporation wants to refer to its employees as disposable worker 001. No, you're always an associate, a teammate. You're always something, right? Or when I was working for Avnet, they called people that you worked with your business partners. Where I was talking to one girl at the corporation, and she looked at me like, "Oh, we have a lot of teammates here today," and I just looked at her like, "What? Teammates? These corporate people aren't your teammates. They're the people that are constantly conspiring to cut positions and lower wages and make more people part time. They always want to hire as many people as they can as part time because they get the great benefit of not having to pay them like a regular worker. If you become adjunct or a per diem employee per se, they're not required to pay you anything. You get absolutely nothing out of it. Even being a contract worker, even if you're working on contract for a large corporation, they don't have to offer you benefits. And when they don't need you, you don't get paid. What kind of job is that? It's a job that directly benefits people at the top. Everything in this country is about benefiting people at the top while exploiting the hell of the people at the bottom and then running businesses. Not only are you paying them nothing, but you're also running those seedy businesses designed to hurt poor people. Because everything in this society involving poor people, it's expensive to be poor. Everything about being poor is a scam. All right, talking point number 3. The same people who tell you it's wrong to charge for helping them are the first ones Venmoing $200 to a cleaning service without blinking. Love doesn't pay rent. Labor does. Love doesn't pay rent. Labor does. And so this is where I kind of start going back to the oldest profession, right? Love doesn't pay rent. But when you turn that same love into labor, then suddenly it starts paying rent. It seems like everything that you do transforms from one variety of the exact same thing, right? You can ask a friend, hopefully not a coworker, to come over and clean your toilet. The second they're done, you're not friends anymore. Your business, it's become a business. They offer you an invoice and they'll look at it like, what is this? And I'm like, it's a bill. You asked me to come over and do work for you. And they'll look at you like, no, 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 this wasn't like that. I'm going to take you out to eat. And that's how I'm going to pay you. You wouldn't believe how many technology transactions I've had where at the end of it, it's like, oh, let's go out to Taco Bell. It's on me. And I'm like, okay, but I just did $300 worth of labor. Are you not going to pay me? And they kind of just look at you, no, 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 we're going out to lunch. And you kind of scratch your head and you look at them and you ask, was this always the plan that you had? To invite me over to do work for free and then take me out to lunch. Can you imagine? You call over the lady of the night and she does the deed. And at the end, she sticks her hand out and you put a taco in her hand and you thank her and you send her back to the alley behind the Taco Bell so she can eat her food. That's not the way the world works unless you're a greedy piece of crap. And we know that the world is full of greedy pieces of crap. All right. At the end of the day, love is free, but labor isn't. You deserve to be paid for your time, your energy, your sacrifices, not guilt tripped into giving it away. If they respect you, they'll respect your price. And if they don't, good. You just found out they were never worth your love in the first place. Ouch, that's cold, ChatGPT. Very, very cold, because I think that's the way that most relationships end, is that they were never worth your love. And somehow you put them up on a pedestal and you thought to yourself, they'll change. They'll become good people, or they'll understand that what they're doing is making me feel bad. But when you meet these real pieces of you know what, they'll drag it out for as long as they can get paid for. And then at the end, they'll tell you it's your fault and break up with you because you're not providing them sufficient resources, whether those are financial, emotional, or hell, maybe even they're living at your place. Like I heard a story a couple of weeks ago about a girl that was living with the guy, and all she wanted to do at home was drink alcohol. She didn't pay rent, she didn't get a job. And then once she got drunk, she got very violent and very verbal. And you think to yourself, these types of relationships happen not just with other people, but even your job is an abusive relationship. You come to work, they don't pay you enough. They constantly are holding your job over your head where you just don't know whether or not you're going to come back. In fact, I was talking to that lady from HR and she told me that one of the office presidents had to be brought into HR and told, You're not allowed to threaten an employee's job if they haven't done anything wrong just because you don't like them. And I think a lot of bad things in this world happen just because we don't like people.